compared to the 30% and stuff, we were doing pretty good from the last few years.
Yes, I agree.
And so just to be clear, our insurance costs only went up 4% for next year.
Instead of the 9 something, correct.
Okay.
That's staying with the same agent?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because we have a dual program, which has helped keep our increase down.
Okay.
Brian, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Now,
Well,
is there any kind of legislation has to be on that, Terry?
I'm sorry, please.
Is there any kind of legislation we have to do for the insurance?
I don't believe so.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
And compared to what I'm seeing at other places, 9% would have been an okay increase compared to some other places I'm seeing this year, but 4% is phenomenal.
Yeah. I think he did a really good job for us. And I think it's because he thought outside the box and he split us into 2 different options. And I think that's why. So I think the 4% increase would keep things pretty much the way they are with the least amount of disruption to the different options and to the program. Do you agree, Brian?
Yes.
Okay.
So we can take that off of old business?
I don't see why not. She's already got it handled. All right. And we have the current bond.
So I think that was, we had been contacted by the company to potentially get a fixed rate instead of the variable rate for the remainder of our existing bond. And we were waiting until the election to decide what to do, because if we were issuing new bonds, we wouldn't necessarily be able to do that. But since the water levy failed, that is something I think we should look at.
I agree. And I think we should keep this on, Mr. Hinkinson, for the next finance meeting. And then Brian can come back with his conversations that he has. Do you agree, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, they've contacted me. After they, saying they're sorry to hear about the levy failing, but was kind of wanting to know what council was thinking about doing, and I told him we was going to have a meeting this week, so I can get back with him.
Yeah,
there's still some potential savings there, because the interest rates right now are completely lower. And I kind of looked at the amortization schedule, and it doesn't fluctuate that much. It fluctuates at like the first few years we paid like 5.1%. We're now paying 5.2% right now. But even at that rate right now, interest rates are in the 3% range, and they say we could have a potential savings. Now, if you want to get in depth, and I can have that guy somehow, we can invite him to a meeting so he can explain it further.
Well, I think maybe because we talked about it a little bit. It was the last finance meeting, since we had it at the end of the month last month. Right. Because we had the chart attached where it was some significant savings. I mean, it wasn't, hey, we doubled our budget, but I mean, that saved some money. I think maybe if you talk to them and just have them put together the actual quote and paperwork, what it would look like, what our interest rate would be, what the savings would be at, that way at the next meeting, then if council wants to do it, we can just go ahead and vote on it and get that before interest rates may or may not go up.
Right.
So are you suggesting, Mayor, that we have this ready for the next council meeting then? And move it to council agenda?
I believe, unless I'm confusing my conversations from the last meeting, I think everybody was kind of in favor of it. Well, almost everybody's on at this point anyway. But I think everybody was more or less in favor definitely exploring that and potentially doing it if it saved us some money if the levy failed. So why waste another meeting time?
That's great. We'll remove it from this agenda, put it on the next council meeting agenda for next council meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That way
So
by the end of the
we're setting it at a set rate then instead of variable.
Well, it's
Right.
a variable, but it's a slightly variable. It ranges from what, like 5.1 to 5.2, 5.25, somewhere like that. It's like refinancing the house, Bob. You can, they're going to keep the same. They're going to keep. We're just going to reissue for the same amount what we owe, and lower our interest rate. That could save us over the next 20 years approximately $500,000 to $600,000 in interest costs.
right. That's what he was saying, Brian. It's going from the variable rate to a lower fixed rate.
Let's do it before he changes his mind. Then.
But we'll find out if we have any costs on our end to convert that, to change over. There might be some costs associated with that.
I'm sure there'll be a few costs, but
Yes.
hopefully not $500,000 of costs.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, all right, so we'll move it to council's agenda, and then Brian will have a report, our proposal for you at that meeting.
And if it comes in early, Brian, it might not be a bad idea. Just get that over to Jeff so that we have that legislation in case council does want to act, because I'm sure it'll take some time to do it, and hopefully we can get that done prior to the end of the year. And so January 1, it's in effect.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, now there doesn't have to be any motion from finance to do that, is there?
We could do one. It probably wouldn't hurt. Like I said, at the last finance meeting, at the last council meeting, we talked about it and moved it to discuss in regular council as well. But I guess it wouldn't hurt to have a motion from finance to proceed with
The set rate?
reissuing bonds at a set rate.
I think we should do it because Jeff always asks me if it went through committee yet. So let's do it.
Yep. Yeah, that way.
Okay.
It's through committee.
I'll make that motion then.
I'll second it. I'll second it, Bob.
Any more discussion? Roll call.
Hankerson,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Cosgray.
Yes.
Okay, we'll scratch the old business off there. We have, there's none left on there.
Good.
All right.
Okay, here we go. Now into new business. All right, here we go. The financials.
Okay.
You're up, Brian.
Yep. Okay, on page 1, there's the bank reconciliation for the month. As you can see, we had a book and bank balance of $2,134,019.49. We had went up, but we had $375,000 in receipts last month. Only $202,000 in payments. So one deposit, or actually deposit in transit, there was 2 credit card transactions. And outstanding checks of $15,200.
Okay.
Page, well, let's see, outstanding payments, I said 15,200. And if you go to page, well, after that, any questions on the reconciliation, I guess?
What does that mean, Brian? Inflating?
Huh?
What does that mean? Inflating bank errors? Under the reconciliation notes for 1,465. Can you
Well,
tell I was in the office today, so Brian and I haven't had a chance to talk.
Well,
Sorry.
that's just a transfer that occurred in one account, not the other. Between our investment account and the checking account. The bank automatically moves money between those two accounts. They like to maintain about $100,000 in the checking account. And when it gets below that, they throw money in. When it gets above that, they put the money in the investment account. And that happens to be what was moved at the end of November, what month are we in? At the end of October. And the payment not in UAN, there was a NSF check that was come through, but we haven't been notified of the bank yet. That has since been posted. So it's just one of those things where it crosses reconciliation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any more questions on the reconciliation?
Nope.
Okay, you can see the check register for the last month. Like I said earlier, we had $202,474 in checks written last month. Looking at the listing itself.
Hey, I see a big check for advanced business communications. Does that mean some of our CARES money, IT stuff has gone through and is in process?
Yeah, that was the down payment for the CARE. Yeah, for the first, the
right,
down
cool.
payment on the CARES Act stuff. For the technology.
Yep. That's the only big one that I saw that was out of normal.
Well, we had a lot in gravel. That, of course, that was for the Westwood project. That was the Olin company, the Orland Corporation. That was $5,400. Pipelines. The team is in the process of replenishing their inventory. And that's, you're right. That's about it.
Now our South Central, we're
Yes.
still tracking that for month to month in usage now that we've got the new membranes in, correct?
That is correct. That's one of our metrics that we're tracking.
Okay. How is that 8,000 for the month compared to I
talked to Brad about this, and he didn't feel as though that we had a full month yet. So he wants to look at the next month's bill. He said it wasn't
After
a
the
good
membrane
representation.
were put in? Or
Oh, membranes. No, I'm sorry, Mayor. I misunderstood you. I thought you said the mill. No, I'll have to do an analysis on that. I have not, unless Brian has.
No, I just know that it's been around that much for a while.
So normal.
Yeah. I guess I'd be interested to see, take last month's bill and compare it to a pre-membrane replacement bill with similar flow.
Okay. I'll have that ready for you for the service meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay, thanks. That'd probably be a good committee to discuss it in.
There you go.
All right. I don't have any more questions on payment listing.
Does anybody else?
I don't.
Okay. All right.
As I'll say, based on that though, since we're not in there, you guys should make your motion to accept Brian's report since he got the okay to do that at the last meeting.
Well, do they want to go over the rest of the stuff, the metrics, or go to the encumbrances, income tax? I haven't done that yet.
Okay, we'll just go ahead and do that.
Okay.
And just if I forget, Mayor, just go ahead and remind me to make that motion.
All right.
All right.
All right, the next one page should be the metrics. Last month, Star Ohio netted us a whole whopping $66. Income tax collections last month was 77,000. And let's see, revenue status. We are, as you can see, we're pretty much above the curve. With 10 months out of the year, we should be around 81, 82%. So all the lines are where they should be in the general fund, because that's strictly the general fund. And appropriation status for the four major funds right now, the general fund's at 80%, street fund 42%, and that's because, Mayor, I've only received one bill for the street paving, and that was for Holder Road, which will be paid probably this week. And then I have not received a bill for the other paving projects yet. Water operating, huh? Pardon?
I said okay. Yeah, because we talked about that. It was just 2 weeks ago that we had that. So
yeah.
So next month it'll jump up there in percentage.
Yeah, it'll jump up. Yeah, it should jump up at the end of this month. Water operating and sewer operating are around 74 and 70% respectively. On the next page should be this is the appropriation status for all the funds by specific. As you can see in the general fund, we're at 80%, which matches the report. But everyone is within, well, cemetery is a little bit above, but there shouldn't be hardly any costs associated with that the rest of the year. But going on to the street fund, there's 42 state highway. But I want to talk about the sewer fund. The sewer fund is at, even though they're at 70%, there is a couple line items though that I'm looking real close. One of them has to do with wages. They're currently at 92%, and you just brought it up about the South Central bill. I believe the last time I looked at I think we have enough money to cover a month and a half. So I lowered that budget last year by 5,000, and I'm starting to think maybe I shouldn't have. So we're kind of, because I know I'll have enough to pay the South Central for the month of November, but December might be a push.
December might be headlamps in the plant, no overhead lights on.
Yeah.
So how do we end up at 92% in wages so far? Is that all the overtime from the membranes and
well, that was from a lot of that has to do with that. As if you recall, we have one employee that floats between all three, and I tried to I took a percentage of his pay, this particular employee's pay, and thinking he's going to work at here, 40% of the time, here 30%, and this particular employee has worked at the sewer plant more than I anticipated, so it took a hit due to the membranes, due to all the projects that's been going on this year.
Right. So that's Mr. Little, and as you know, we put his pay across 3 different areas. It just so happens the focus this year was totally on sewer, and like Brian has said, we had the mill project, we had Creative Foods issue, we had the lift station, and we had some of the other electrical things that got out of kilter, plus the membrane installation. All of that took hours out of that fund towards his wages. So I think it's a learning curve when we have this type of a service employee across 3 different funds. But to Brian's point, I don't know how we can evenly distribute that and say, okay, you got your 25% done here, now you're done. You can't do any more sewer projects. We have to use them where we need him. And again, most of the projects were heavy in the sewer this year.
Yeah, which means what we budgeted for him in water will probably be under because he was there less. So
right, and streets especially.
Unfortunately, with those funds, we can't just move the money back and forth between them. So,
no.
Yeah. So, All right. Will we have to do a supplemental appropriation to transfer something in there, or do, I guess we have, I think looking at the numbers you sent me earlier, Brian, there won't be a carryover. So will we need to do an appropriation and fund it from general fund, or is there sufficient balance there that's just
There might be-
unencumbered that we can encumber?
That's one of the things I'm going to be looking at the next couple of weeks, is try to come up with a number to figure out to try to estimate what the sewer wage is going to be for the rest of the year. We might be able to just reallocate some monies from somewhere. That would
Within the
require-
sewer fund.
Within the sewer fund.
Right.
Not physically increase appropriate, maybe reallocate, which council would
Right.
have to do, because council passes, when they pass appropriate, yes, they see a detail, but they pass wages and everything else. So we might have to have council reallocate some money. But I got to do that analysis, and I haven't had a chance to do it yet.
And
I
I
just-
do believe,
Okay.
not to step on you, Brian, that this week he has been working at the water plant most of the time. We're trying
Yeah.
to work on the bulk water meter. That's an awakening, just like the creative food meter was. And he's doing some other work in the plant. So this week, I know he's been, or shouldn't say this week, it's only Tuesday, but most of last week and this week, he has been focused on water. And then he also has been helping with leaf collection. So it may all, even out as we go along. Like Brian said, he'll just have to take a look at it and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
I just successfully paid payroll today, and I didn't get a message that says, "Hey, you don't have enough money to pay the wages out of the sewer fund." So, yeah, his timesheet this time was a little bit sewer, a lot more in water this time, and just a little bit in street. So, like Terry said, he helped out with maybe with some
Leaf
picking up
collection.
leaves and so forth.
Okay.
So it may be
Those are-
good.
But those are the two lines I'm looking at for the sewer fund. And you know what? The team has done very well this year, keeping only buying when they need to buy. I mean, they really stepped up and didn't overspend this year. So,
Not that they overspent the other years. They were just
well, yeah.
maybe a little more focused this year. So
Well, that's true. I meant to say it that way. But
yes,
it didn't come out that way, but that's the way I meant it.
we know what you meant, Brian.
That income
Okay,
tax.
is there any,
That income tax, you can see the snapshot on the income tax through November 2nd. As you can see from the last month was we got 77,000. Our first allotment this month was 47,000. So I don't look for that. So I look for that 77,000 to be even less this month. When it's all said and done.
Which would be kind of consistent with last year's distributions too.
Yes.
They kind of dip off at the end of the year.
Yes, they'll start picking up till the beginning of the year when tax season rolls around again. That's all I got for my report.
okay. I guess we'll go ahead and approve the financials then. I'll make the motion.
Oscar, second.
All right. Any more discussion on the financials? Roll call.
Hankinson,
Yes.
Cosgray,
Yes.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other new business? I hear none. So, we have our next meeting scheduled for December the 14th at 6 p.m. With nothing else come to finance, we'll adjourn at 6:35.
Good deal.
Time did you
All
start
right.
that?
What about
What's that, Mike?
6:01?
I had 6:07. Is that about right?
That sounds good.
Okay.
So you want it down at 6:07 start time? What did you have, Brian?
What's that?
Start time.
Oh, I had it at 6:04.
There you go, Mike. It started at 6:04.
Okay. I can change the 7 into a 4.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Hey, Chuck, I think I saw Rick come on and Brandy's on, so you should be good to start your, unless you want to wait till 6:45.
Well, I think I think we have it. We have an immunity past the finance meeting, so I just assume we just start. Might as well start. Okay, Brian, we'll call this meeting to order. Or Brian, call a roll call.
Keller,
Present.
Foreman,
Present.
McCreary,
Present.
Also in attendance tonight, we have the mayor, we have the VA Terry, we have Finance Officer Brian, we have Barb, we have Mike Hamilton, we have Brandy. Oh, well, Brandy's on the committee. Wade and Bob Hankston. So everybody, all councilors on. That's good. Okay, approval of the minutes of October the 12th, 2020. Barb sent the email to me. I read them. They looked okay with me. Anybody else have any issues with the minutes of 12th of October?
Everything looked good to me.
I wasn't.
Okay, I need a
Motion to approve.
motion here.
Motion to approve.
I
is
hear a
written.
second.
Foreman?
I'll second the motion. Any questions yet on the motion? Okay, roll call, Brian.
Foreman,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
McCreary,
I will abstain. I wasn't present for that meeting.
Okay, passed 2-0. Okay, visitors. Mary, is there anybody on?
Nope. And I'm checking the emails now, but nope. So you're good to keep going.
Okay. Okay, the goals for 2020, the employees manual review. I doubt there's an issue right now. Is there, Terry?
No, in fact, the only thing I would say to that at the moment is that last Wednesday I had a meeting with staff and shared with them the COVID-19 legislation, which was incorporated into the employees manual.
Okay.
that is-
Yeah, I know we talked about it. Yeah, that's right. We did talk about that. And the rules of council, that's something we do early in the year or something, so, or anything during the year. So I think that just, both of them just stay on. Okay, unfinished business, cemetery fees. I do not have my paper with me. I should have brought it down with me, but I don't have it. I know, Terry, I know you had some, a list of, different cemeteries.
Right. Now to this, if I may, Chuck, as far as the cemetery fees, one of the things that we are doing is that we had a meeting. I have a committee that I put together consisting of Barb and Missy, Tim, and myself. And we had our first meeting 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that we're going to discuss is the total end-to-end process, along with bringing forth a suggestion for the cemetery fees based on that documentation that I sent out. We will pull Jeff in as we need him when it comes to transfers and stuff, but we're just trying to get the whole end-to-end process looked at and reviewed. So probably, Chuck, I'm going to suggest that this won't be finished by the end of the year. So I'm going to say that we put cemetery as one of the goals, and we use the finance meeting maybe to report it out if everybody's good with that. I mean,
Okay,
Rules Committee to report out. That way what we're doing right now, the first step was to gather all of our maps. We have maps that are like pieces that are just falling apart, yellow paper that is in plastic. So we're going to take all of those maps and we're going to have copies made and then put the other ones in archives so that we can draw them and make suggestions. So I'm looking at this being a lengthy project, a much needed project. And at the end of it, I think we'll be ready to suggest to rules the new cemetery fees. So I say this is a 2021 goal.
Okay, sounds good. Because I know the last time we increased them, I know Tim did it, and I know it needs to be done. And so I agree 100% with what you're doing.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments? Okay.
I'm looking over the sheet again because I glanced at it, and I agree. We're charging $400 residential, and Forest Rose in Lancaster is $1,255 for a plot. We're a third of the cost.
Right. And what we're doing is we're getting cemetery jumping, meaning that people may come and say, well, I was born in Baltimore. Of course, I left when I was 7 years old. And, now I want to come back and be buried there. That really doesn't qualify them as a resident. So I think we'll put a lot of that stuff together because we're getting more requests for transfers. And each time I go to Jeff to ask his opinion, I'd like for it to be more black and white so that we have a ruling already that says if you want to sell your cemetery plot, the only way you can sell it is to sell it back to the village for exactly what you paid for it originally, whether that was 10 or 15 years ago. So that's one of the things that we have to get settled because, again, we have people that live outside of Baltimore that are transferring lots to people that live outside of Baltimore but maybe graduated. So I think we just need to I will incorporate Jeff when it comes to those kind of things so that we just need a consistent program, and it just needs, some of the information is in Microsoft Word, some of it is just handwritten. So we're trying to get all of that together into one good documentation. And we may have to have some professional help at some point in time, but we need to get it organized. One of the things that we did talk about, and you'll see when each year Brian does allow for an indigent burial. And we just got notification 3 weeks ago, well, now 2 weeks ago, I guess, not 3, that we're going to have one in the village. That policy council had put into place. And to me, that's a really good black and white policy. I like it. So what happens is when a funeral home contacts us, we have a form now that Jeff created for us that they have to prove residency. And then there are certain items underneath it, but we pay no more than $750. I'm bringing that up because one of the things that we discussed in the task team was that we do have an area over in and let me see if I get this right, the Old Methodist Episcopal something cemetery, which is on Granville Street. There is a plot over there that is not, there's some land that is not plotted out, but was donated to us to be used for cremations for indigent. So that's something we also will be working on. So there is a lot to do.
Well, it sounds like it. Well, that's a good winter project, sounds like.
Oh, well, thanks, Chuck.
I mean, I'm sitting here in my T-shirt and shorts, but that's all right.
I don't want to hear it, Chuck. So
I
anyhow,
know.
One other thing that's connected to cemeteries also is that, and I think I can bring it up here just because we're talking about cemetery fees, because expenses do impact, the amount of fees we need to charge. And we had a window at the new cemetery that we just took in, Basel Memorial, out on and so
Basel Western.
Yeah, Basel Western. And we are having a hard time finding someone who would even tackle trying to fix that window, which is a dirty shame, just because of the age of the lead and et cetera. You know, a lot of people don't want to tackle it, but we're working hard to come up with some sort of a number. The mayor has requested a hard backed number of what it would take to fix it, because it is going to take a lot of money. It is the only window that did not have a covering, a protective covering over it. So that's the other
There
piece
is.
of
Be
it.
darned.
Hey, Terry,
Yes.
Huh.
I got a contact from Ned Kaufman. He
Okay.
bought the old church in Millersport, and he made a deal with the guy to buy all the leaded glass so he could redo it. And Ned
Okay.
said he was pretty reasonable. So let me see if I can put you in contact with him, because all the leaded glass windows in that old church right in the middle of downtown Millersport are getting ready to be taken out.
Perfect. And I know
So-
they become very fragile after years of
Yeah,
endurance.
he's very talented at restoring them and redoing them. And
Right.
Ned indicated that he felt like he was very reasonable for that type of work. So
Perfect.
I will try to put you in contact with him.
I would love it. Thank you very much, Mr. Foreman. That's all I have on cemeteries, Chuck, more than you probably want to know.
Well, you know, you got to take baby steps sometime. That's good, because we need to do it right. So that's a good idea. Anybody else have anything on cemetery fees? Okay, let's go to unfinished business on ordinance 2020-35 demolition permit fees. This was in council last meeting and was brought back to rules because we had some not issues, but just concerns about it. I know Rick, he had some major concerns about it. Instead of just doubling the fees, it put some teeth into it. So Rick, I'm gonna kind of let you see what your ideas about it.
Yeah. And I think in that meeting, Wade mentioned that he had a building he wanted to tear down. And I mean, I own a building, and it's so bad that the only feasible option is for me to spend money to tear it down. At that point, aren't they doing us all a favor? And do we really want to raise the bar and make it harder? Yeah, we've had bad actors. I understand. I get it. There was a problem with some people that tore down buildings, and it was a bad problem. But I don't think raising the bar on the random person that just wants to tear down a house and build a new house, or tear down an old barn and build a new barn, or turn it into grass because the building is in such disrepair. I don't think raising the bar or raising the cost to them benefits us or the village. That's all. It's not, I mean, if we want to do it, we can do it. That's fine. I just feel like it isn't productive. It isn't helpful. Another $150 doesn't solve the problem, doesn't make Terry have to deal with the people who were bad actors. It doesn't cover the cost. It doesn't fix the problem. It just makes the bar higher for the responsible person that's just trying to clean up a mess. And there's a lot of messes that need cleaned up. And I really don't want to raise the bar. That's all. That's just my 2 cents worth. That's the only reason I feel the way I feel.
I thought at the meeting the last time, though, you talked about setting it at like $1,000.
Yeah.
I said that if you really want to solve,
you're changing up.
No. I said if you really want to solve the problem, like if you really wanted to have some teeth, you'd have to do that. I don't want to do that either. I just said $150 just makes a small nuisance into a little bit bigger nuisance.
Well, I guess I don't
Let's
see
say
how
you're tearing down Ohio Paper Mill. Let's say they decide they're going to build a whole new building. Does a demolition permit there for $150 or $300 make any difference at all? Versus Wade's shed. It's like a nuisance tax. It's like just enough to make people upset about it or irritated by it.
Excuse me.
and I guess on one hand, I guess if we're comparing the paper mill to a shed, then maybe we should look at how some of the communities have done it based on square footage. And the more square footage you're tearing down, the higher the demolition permit fee. I see it as, $150 for your non-bad actor, your Wade, who's going to tear down a building, you know, the $150 covers the cost so that it's revenue neutral or expense neutral for the village. It covers Terry's time and Tim's time to go out and do the couple inspections. You know, you're right. Some people may require, it may take more than $300 worth of employee time. The one home already has. But for your one that's not your incredibly bad actor, but they don't follow all the rules as closely as they should, the 300 I think would cover a lot of that. And again, for that good actor that pays their permit, has no problems, it comes down, they get 150 of it back at the end.
Yeah, I mean,
So
what if they're going into it?
To me,
What if they're going in, getting ready to tear down a nasty house, and already they know they're going to build a nice house right back in its place? And that's great for us. That'd be amazing, because now instead of having a ratty house, we're going to have a brand new house right where that one used to be. Is there any benefit to charging that person a $150 demolition fee because they're going to just rip it down and build a new one right away? I've done that. I mean, I've torn down a house and built a new house right where the old one was. And that would be the best thing that could happen for us all over town. Do we really need to raise the cost of tearing down the old house?
And I would think that would be something Terry could do on a case-by-case basis. Hey, I'm coming in and you're applying for a demolition permit at the same time you're applying for a permit to build a house. That doesn't happen that often here. Someone tearing down a shed or tearing down a house on Mill Street that isn't being rebuilt right away, those are the more common examples. So that's what this is for, that offshoot of, I'm going to tear down a house and build a new one right away. I would think Terry could work with them. Okay, you're tearing it down, you're building one. As long as you build one within so long, she could bring it to council and we could waive that if the new house goes up within so many months of the other one coming down. But I wouldn't want to just put it out there that, hey, if you're going to tear down a house and then build a new one, you can save your $300 demolition fee, because we would have people that would apply for their demolition fee, apply to put a house down, and 2 years later, we'd still be waiting for a house to be built.
And I agree with that, Mayor. Everything you said is spot right on from my experience. The other thing that I also want to say is that this is the original $150 is for the inspections, 3 of them, in fact, between Tim and I, going back and forth. But then it gets elevated into a whole new area when they do not comply, and that goes into code enforcement. And then it comes down to my code enforcement officer taking pictures, sending letters, and then after sending letters, following up, taking more pictures, sending them to mayor's court. So all of that takes time, because then once we get into that mode, then we've got Missy's time, we have code enforcement's time, and my time. So I understand. I could not find, I called Johnstown and Jim did not call me back, which I thought was unusual, but I cannot find anybody that does a scale as far as their demo fees. In fact, usually they're pretty set, $150. I would be okay. And I think Wade's case is a good example of tearing down a shed versus tearing down a building. I mean, maybe we have a square footage rule. Maybe we say if in this case, if Wade's shed is only 10 by 10 and that would be under 100, maybe there is no charge, but if we have somebody that has, 1,000 square feet by 1,000 square feet, that's where we're going to probably have the most issues. And I know that we have a couple demos coming up. And again, I work demos the whole year. And that is correct. Out of all the cases that I grant, maybe two I have to bring on code enforcement, and one, so much time we'll never recoup the money. So I think I don't want to get rid of the $150, but maybe there is something that we can work as far as size wise for the smaller building.
Well, let me ask, because we don't require a permit to put up a building under 200 square feet, correct?
Correct.
100, isn't it?
100. Right. 10 by 10.
Yeah, it used to be 200. It's now 100. So, but we would require a permit to tear down that building of 100 square feet. So that, in that case, that makes sense to, if we
Yes.
don't require a permit to put it up,
Correct.
unless there's water, sewer, or
I was
electricity
going to say,
run
there's
to
a
it.
difference whether
There
there's
you go.
utilities to it or
Why-
not, too.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So if we're not charging a permit to put up a 10 by 10 shed, I agree. Maybe we shouldn't be charging a permit to tear it down unless there is the necessity for a utility inspection.
Maybe that's the
Yeah, but even
criteria.
if you put a 10 by 10, even if you put a 10 by 10 shed up, you still have to come to the office so they know it's the setback and all that is correct. In that right? You just
That-
can't take a 10 by 10 shed someplace and just put it on your property.
This is what I've been doing, Chuck, because you are correct, because those are the things that we have to coordinate with the auditor's office. What I have been doing, if someone calls me and says that they have a shed that they want to put up, I ask them to submit a permit. If it falls in the parameters where it doesn't require a permit, I still say I will write on it, no permit required, no cost, setbacks followed, and then put it in their file. That way we do have a documentation of where they're sitting, that shed, because you're right, Chuck, they still have to adhere to setbacks. So I
Yeah.
have been doing that.
Well, but tearing it down, there's no setback issue.
No.
No,
But there's the paperwork. So in
Yes.
that case, the person tearing down that 10 by 10 shed, they submit their demolition permit request. Terry looks at it and says and they say no utilities,
Right.
and there was no fee to put it up, so there's no demolition permit fee assigned for that particular one.
Correct.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Maybe this is off, but just in listening to this, is there any way that something equivalent or similar to a deposit be made? So a $300 charge, so long as everything is completed in a timely manner and cleaned up, essentially they get 150 back, and then the 150 is taken off the end as the.
That's correct. That's what what the ordinance is, Brandon.
That is exactly
Yeah.
what, okay, which I guess we,
Yes.
Yep.
but that's why I'm like, seems like,
Yep.
No, I think it's a good observance. Yes.
And my contention was that if that's the goal, that the $150 probably isn't enough, but I really don't want to raise it either. So
and that's,
don't take me saying that I'd go 1,000 to mean that I want to do that. I'm just
Okay.
saying that if you were really trying to solve the problem, $150 isn't enough. That's all.
I
Well, and
that's what you were saying. I remember the conversation, you were saying $1,000, but then obviously they would get the majority of it back so long as it was completed in a timely manner in the area that
Correct.
demolition had occurred, had been cleaned up, et cetera.
And-
That's why
and there is the potential for that really bad actor. I mean, the $300, the extra 150 helps then to get it into court. And so
Correct.
from there is the ability for basically restitution of any additional costs associated, depending
Correct.
on how that court case works out. So for that really bad actor that it costs $1,000 in employee time to do, we might not always get that. It won't be written into an ordinance, but there is at least an avenue for us to explore getting some of that back through court.
Correct. And I think that extra 150 would cover then those hours that code enforcement and Missy would have to spend on getting that case from, point A into court. So you're right on.
Okay. Okay. So do we?
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
I was going to say, do we need to or do we want to amend this ordinance to, based on our conversation a few minutes ago about the buildings that don't require permits to go up, to exempt them from this?
Is this going to second reading tonight? I've kind of lost track. Barb, does this go to second tonight? Well, I guess I could look at the agenda.
Yep. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a
Yes.
second reading tonight.
All right, so let's leave it, let's read it and leave it, go to third, and I will have, let me look at it a little closer, Mayor. And then maybe for the next meeting, if we need to amend it, we can. Does that make sense or not? I mean, what are we amending it to?
Yeah. Do we need to amend it to and does council want to amend it to comport with what we were talking about for that 100 square foot building? There's no permit to put it up, but this ordinance requires a $300 deposit to tear it down. And then once you tear it down, you get 150 back if you're good. Do we need to amend this to make it comport with, you put up a 100 square foot building, you're tearing down a 100 square foot building, you fill out the paperwork, but there's no permit application fee associated because there's no permit required to tear down that 100 square foot shed. Because as this ordinance reads right now, that 100 square foot shed needs a permit to be torn down, even though they didn't need one to put it up.
I see what you're saying. So would we wanted to marry it to the zoning code that says if a structure does not require a permit to be built, it doesn't require a permit to be demolished, but they still have to fill out a permit application so the setbacks can be checked?
Well, so that we have record of it. We don't have to worry about setbacks on the demolition, but so we have a record of it. Yes,
You're right. I got setbacks in the mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying we should do, is so that
I'm good with that.
it's consistent.
I'm good with that if
Okay,
everybody else
well.
is good with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. 10 by 10 is not a very big building. That's a pretty small building. That's just a shed. That's not even
Right.
a garage or nothing. It's just a shed. So, if somebody wants to tear it down, I mean, they come in and tell, the village that they're going to tear it down, and they get it done. And,
Yep.
yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that either.
So
Okay, anybody else have any more comments on that?
Yeah.
what
I think
was that a motion, Chuck, to have Jeff amend this for the third reading?
Well, I know Terry said something about she wanted to kind of look at it and come back at third reading. Why don't we kick it around a little bit more? I know everybody's here tonight on council.
No, I'm good with it, Chuck. I misunderstood, but the
Okay.
way the mayor stated it, I'm good with that.
Oh, you're good with that? Okay.
Yep,
Well, then
I
we
am.
can get Jeff to change the ordinance and put
Okay.
the, that's okay.
Okay.
I'm okay. How about, Rick and, Randy, you okay?
Yes, I'd move to amend the ordinance. Absolutely.
Yeah, I at the very least, yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
Hey
Okay.
Chuck, this is Bob.
Yes, Bob.
As far as the sheds go, I was thinking about while you guys were talking. Instead of putting a square footage on it, could you maybe think if a building didn't have a permanent foundation, that there would be like a $50 fee for the demolition? Then if it was removed correctly and no problem, you get the $50 fee back. But I'm just talking the no foundation sheds. That's it.
Would that be cost effective, or will we spend more time / money processing paperwork for that small of a structure?
Well, Bob,
That
yeah,
doesn't.
Bob.
Well, those are pretty
Well,
big.
most sheds that are don't have a permanent foundation, but there's very few 10 by 10 sheds. Most of them you look at, 12 by 12s or, 10 by 12s or even a 10 by 20. And as I said, I was just looking at the foundation. If it didn't have a foundation, that would be considered a shed, and that's why I was thinking maybe the $50, and then you get it back if you didn't leave a mess. That way, most shed owners would just go ahead and tear them down and get rid of them.
I guess now I'm starting to wonder what you're going to call a foundation and what you're not going to call a foundation too.
Yeah.
Well,
Because my garage is not attached to my house, and it just sits on. It don't have a foundation. It just sits on a pad, concrete, floor.
that's a
So
permanent
really-
foundation.
Is that okay?
I mean,
So anything's on
you know-
runners is
runners is not a permanent foundation.
No, I know that's what I'm
It's
saying.
something to, that way you're not, a 10 by 10 is pretty small. There are very few of those.
Well, Bob, what we're saying is if somebody put a 20 foot by 20 foot shed, they have to come in and get a permit to have it put in. Anything under 100 square feet, they don't.
Yeah.
And that is a true statement. Our zoning code says that a zoning permit is required for any construction or addition of an accessory structure that is greater than 100 square feet. So anything at 100 square feet or below would not require a zoning permit to build. So I would say if we just reflect that as far as to tear down. I fear, Mr. Hankinson, I understand what you're saying about the foundations, but I can see myself getting into a in-depth discussion with an owner of a building who doesn't consider something a foundation, and I do. So I think that, again, maybe we just mirror the zoning permit.
Yeah, I like the idea of mirroring the zoning because I'm with Rick. What becomes a foundation and what doesn't? Because I can go not in the village, but I can go point you out to a machinery shed. It's a dirt floor, but the posts are, the posts are cemented 8 feet underground because of the size of the machinery shed. It doesn't have a cement floor, but it might not. I would almost consider that a foundation because of just the way it's anchored into the ground.
Yeah. And some pole barns are just built incorrectly where they just stuck the poles in the ground and then there's literally no foundation. And then a lot of these are on concrete piers. You really start to, most of the big barns around town that ought to be torn down are on deteriorating concrete piers.
Yeah.
Yep.
So and
that's my contention. That's my problem with it. We wish they would tear them down. Let's not make it more harmful or more. Let's not raise the bar for tearing those things down. But and then like I say, I get it. There's been a problem. I just don't think $150 solves it. So that's just my opinion.
That's all I have. So, okay.
Thank you for your input.
I think if somebody's going to put a concrete slab down to put a 10 by 10 shed on, they're going to keep it in good shape and not want to tear it down in the first place there. They went to the added expense for the concrete floor and everything.
I would think.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have Jeff amend that ordinance, and we'll take it to council. I know he won't get it done tonight, so the third reading it'll be amended. And any more new or any more old business or unfinished business?
Do we
I
need
don't
that?
see any. So,
Mayor, do we need that
You
in the
need that
form
in a
of a
motion?
motion?
Yeah, please.
I think we do.
okay. Since I'm a sponsor on that ordinance, I'll make a motion that we amend the ordinance where anything less, 10 by 10 or 100 square feet, you don't need a permit to tear it down. That would be amended into the ordinance. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Brandy second. Any more discussion on that? Hearing none, roll call.
Keller,
Yes.
Foreman,
No.
McCreary.
Yes.
Okay. Passed 2-1. So that would go to Jeff to get that ordinance amended. All right. Any new business? I don't see anything on the agenda, but Terry, you have anything you want to
No, I
add
don't
or
have any,
anything?
I don't have anything new for rules, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, hearing none, I guess the meeting is adjourned, and our next meeting will be the second Monday in December on the 14th, right after finance.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you. All right, we got about 20 minutes till council starts. I'm gonna stop the recording and stream.